Good evening and welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this Tuesday, September 27th. Nice to have all of you here tonight. And with that, Dee, would you please call roll?
Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Benjamin.
Present.
Councilmember Dubin.
Here.
Councilmember Guido.
Here.
Councilmember McCall.
Here.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Under announcements tonight, starting October 1st, or that's this Saturday, youth under 18 can ride Pullman Transit for free as part of a new formal fare policy that was adopted by the council on September 13th, and with the help of the state legislature as well on that one. Also, the trio of city council ward town halls are coming up on October 4th through the 6th from 6 to 7:30 right here in the council chambers. Please participate in the opportunity to ask questions. You can provide feedback and you can keep the conversation going. And some people have even been emailing today saying, I can hardly wait to that town hall to let you know what's going on. So that's just some of the suggestions out there. City is always looking for volunteers to make a difference in the community. We have several opportunities features on our board and commission webpage right now. City has some openings for lifeguards, swim instructors at the Pullman Aquatic Center. You can visit the career portal on our website and learn more how to apply. Mary's Park, Pullman's new ADA accessible park that we've had open for a while. We've been fixing it up. We've done a lot of improvements and will be open to the public tomorrow. We've had fencing around there as we've been doing a lot of construction. So the park is located at 1570 Southeast Johnson Avenue, right across from the dog park. You can save 20% on Pullman Aquatic and Fitness Center memberships if you purchase by the end of September. That's the end of this week. And you can purchase online, in person, or by calling the Pullman Parks and Recreation Department. Construction to repair the damage caused by the September 17th water main break at Grandin Center started yesterday. If you can take other alternative routes, especially during the heavy commute time, which in Pullman's only about a half hour or so, as opposed to other cities. But there's a lot of alternative roads, and even if you have to go through it, they've still been moving traffic along pretty good. And again, I've got to hand it to the maintenance and operations and our water department for the excellent work in terms of getting that shut down and getting the road back open by the next day. Actually, that night, late that night, they just did a heck of a job. And at least it was nice that a couple of people called in and left a positive message for our Public Works Department about how impressed they were with how fast the crew worked on that. So we really appreciate that hard work. Planning Department, Planning Commission will have a regular meeting tomorrow, public hearing to rezone at 205 and 215 Southeast Paradise Street. The meeting starts at 7 o'clock here in the council chambers. Good Yarns meets Friday at 1 o'clock at Neal Public Library for anyone looking to meet fellow hobbyists for knitting and crocheting. And those are the announcements tonight. With that, we're going to have a Whitman County District Court update from Judge Hart.
Quite a journey. How are we doing? Hey, thanks for having me, us. Ms. Marlene Markley's with me, our court administrator. I'm John Hart. I'm your Whitman County District Court judge, and it's been a while. We had this pandemic that interrupted our between our last visit and today. We last visited together in 2019, and it was my pledge to reacquaint you with me and our court and just update you on what's going on pretty much yearly. I think that's important. We're engaged in a very important service contract between the county's district court and the city, and it's important for you to know what we're up to. As we know, the pandemic struck, and that interfered with our opportunity to keep you updated, kept everyone very busy, and caused us all to have to pivot very abruptly and just kind of tread water. So I'm going to try to keep things brief, but it is important from my perspective, I think from yours, that you hear from me directly. Marlene, if there's any technical details that you need or stats, because that's her forte. But lots happened in the last 3 years, and I want to bring you guys up to speed. First, I see some new faces since 19, and it's probably important that I give you a brief summary of what we do. Just kind of general background. Some of you may not remember, some of you may not know. We are a court of limited jurisdiction. The state by statute mandates that every county has a district court, operates, maintains a district court. By statute, every municipality with over 400,000 residents is required to have a municipal court. There are several, I would say it's the majority of the municipalities under 400,000 engage in a contract for services with the county's district court in that particular county. There's an obvious reason for this. It's the economy of scale. The county is mandated to have these courts. They are set up with the infrastructure to have them. Judges, clerks, probation, prosecutor, defense attorney. Probably most important as far as the expense is the jail. And that's why you see this synergy between municipalities and counties. Now, our court, district courts, have a limited jurisdiction carved out from the greater original jurisdiction of the superior courts. We hear criminal misdemeanor offenses, traffic offenses, and other kinds of infractions, nuisance code violations, things like that. We also hear protection order hearings and small claims matters. Now, those latter two, protection orders and small claims, are the exclusive jurisdiction of district courts. Municipal courts do not have jurisdiction over those kinds of cases. For a very long time, we were in Pullman 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Colfax in the county courthouse on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Now, the last year, you may know, we've been operating solely from Pullman as the county's courthouse has been under renovation. We're fortunate to have been afforded that opportunity. Now, starting next Monday, we'll be back in the county. We're going to go back to our regularly scheduled programming. But I'm mindful of how important it is, specifically back to those latter two types of areas that we cover, to have a presence in Pullman. Roughly 75% of all protection orders are filed in our Pullman branch, and the number grows, the vast number of protection orders. They are on the rise. The state legislature just revamped the process of petitioning for and courts hearing protection orders, and the effort was to make it more available to individuals in need. Our court also, roughly 2/3 of the small claims matters are filed with our Pullman branch. So for most of us, a trip down to Colfax is just hopping in the car and no traffic, and you just you clear your thoughts and you head on to the courthouse. For many of those people, namely younger people, college-aged people that are filing for protection orders, small claims matters, Colfax might as well be Seattle if they're 18 years old and their parents dropped them off without a car. Unfortunately, there's just not mass transit that's driving back and forth. Once upon a time, that was an option, not anymore. So it's so important and vital that those services are provided here in Pullman, and I'm proud that we are able to do so. It is important. So, what's going on with us? Well, 2019, my first year in this position, succeeding the Honorable Douglas Robinson, was great. We were hitting our stride. We immediately embraced some technology upgrades in our court. We were poised to start to diversify the services we provide to our citizens in this county, including the city of Pullman. And then we all know what happened, the pandemic. And we were forced to pivot. Our courts need to be open every day. And for anyone in this room, for the very first time in our lifetime, probably our parents' lifetime, we shut down. We locked down. I am so proud of our staff. They're innovative, they're motivated, they are smart. We have, thanks to Ms. Markley, we have an excellent staff assembled, and that wasn't okay for them. They said, we got to reopen, and we did. We were the 4th court in the state to reopen for services. And we did so by embracing technology. We are also the fourth court in the state because you have to be open. Courts have to be open to the public. That's how citizens access justice, by being open. Well, how would we remain open? We use Zoom like everyone else. We live streamed, and we got in there. We had a great staff, and they got us up and running right away, and it was just amazing. And all of these exciting programs and diversification of our services just had to be put on hold, and we read and reacted just like everybody else every single day. What are our numbers at? What kind of access do we have? When can we open our doors to people coming into court? How do we do that? Masking, other things. You read about the problems specifically with our courts in our state and around the nation. For a number of reasons, mainly the hard work of our staff, we didn't suffer from a lot of those problems. We had to shut down for jury trials, but we reopened and we pushed through our backlog, and we have no backlog. There are still many courts, especially in larger jurisdictions, larger cities, that still are suffering from a backlog. There's literally people in jail that have been waiting for a trial seemingly indefinitely. That's not happening in Whitman County. That's not happening here. We pushed through that backlog very quickly, got back up to speed, and things have been going really, really well. In large part, it was seamless because of the opportunity that the city provided us by being able to stay open 5 days a week when the county courthouse was under renovation. So I couldn't be more proud of our staff and their efforts. Now, like I said, we're finally back to these programs that I'm passionate about, that Marlene's passionate about, our staff is as well. And I want to bring some important updates to your attention. Courtroom security. It may or may not surprise you to hear that the majority of courthouses in our state have little or no security measures in place. That's not okay with me. Security and safety of the people coming into court ought not to be a reactive measure. It ought to be a proactive measure. We have been fortunate to secure some state funding, not nearly enough to be frank, but $40,000 for our courthouse. We need more. We've been actively engaged with the Administrative Office of Courts, meaning Marlene and myself, talking with them about a round of legislation that will be proposed. The legislature shot us down last session, but next session there will be a bill proposed, I hope, I expect, that's kind of a synergy between, or a shared expense proposal between the state and local jurisdictions. I won't rest, literally or figuratively, until I know I'm safe in the building, all buildings, and that our staff is safe, that the people coming into our court are safe. I think that obligation falls on me, and that's something I won't rest until we have. Now, there's some better news. There's some good news there, but it's still a work in progress. Technology, we all know. I mean, look at this beautiful. Did I mention how beautiful this space is? Wow. Like, first of all, thank you for having us again. Second of all, thanks for creating such an inviting and beautiful space for our citizens to meet and for you all to hold your meetings. Technology plays a major role in that. None of us, all of us, how about this, have been forced to accept and embrace technology in some respect to keep our businesses open, to keep our functions alive. And we were able to secure, well, countywide, 3 $50,000 grants from the state, one for Superior Court, one for our Colfax branch of the district court, one for our Pullman branch of the district court. This is intended to ease our need for connecting with people, specifically virtually. It may surprise you to hear approximately 1/3 of all of our hearings are virtual in some respect. Maybe hybrid, maybe entirely virtual. Knock on some wood here, I'm hoping we'll never have to lock down ever again, but if we did, we're going to be ready to be entirely virtual if we need to be, in a much more robust and seamless manner than we've ever been. We've done an excellent job, but it's a little clunky. I often tell people, utilizing Zoom in court is like working twice as hard to get half as much done. There's technology out there that will make it easier for us to do our work, make our courts accessible for those that are in person and virtual and hybrid. So I'm excited about that. We've contracted, or we're in the process of contracting with a local provider. We've met with them a number of times, excellent people, experts in their field, and they understand our needs. And they did this major overhaul in the Tri-Cities, and it's just beautiful. It's been lauded statewide. It's really nice. Finally, I'm getting to the end here. Therapeutic court. Beyond excited about our new therapeutic court program. To date, Marlon, 531,000, 19,000, somewhere around there. Over $500,000 in state funding that we've secured to create and maintain and expand our therapeutic court services. These are data-driven programs that are intended to address individuals, low-level, non-violent offenders that suffer from a mental health and or substance use disorder, and that underlying mental health condition and issue is driving their alleged criminal behavior. It provides these individuals an opportunity to engage with the court, with counseling, vocational services, whatever is needed for them, that individualized plan for them, then to not only rehabilitate that person and put them in a better place, to eliminate any future criminal behavior, but obviously it lowers rates of recidivism. It lowers rates of victimization. It makes our community safer. It's a win-win-win approach. It's not for everyone, but for those in need that are motivated, amenable to treatment, it's such an amazing program for these people. And again, I can't underemphasize that this is not escaping accountability. This is an enhanced level of accountability that serves an important need, and it's a growing need. I think we all have recognized locally and broadly that the pandemic has triggered, it's pushed people that are on a borderline into a bad place, potentially a dangerous place for them and others. This is a kind of program that will assist those people in need. If you go to a larger jurisdiction, you're going to see a broad base of different kinds of programs. You go up to Spokane, there's Veterans Court, there's DUI Court, there's maybe a Domestic Violence Court. They have so many programs. They have a much greater need and greater resources. Thankfully, I love living in Pullman. I love living in Whitman County, and we don't have that need that they have there. But we do have a need. So we have a much broader scope. And within that broader scope, we're going to address each individual as needed. Now, there needs to be buy-in. That was a process. That was a lengthy process. I banged down a lot of doors and forced a lot of individuals to take meetings and showed them the data, showed them the approach, showed them what this program meant. And there was a careful negotiation on who would be allowed in and who wouldn't. And there's more people involved than just myself in that process. And right out of the gate, we recognized that some of the people with the greatest need were left out. They just didn't fit the criteria that was negotiated for the program. So this latest round of funding, we're going to expand our services to a post-adjudication. So our community court is a pre-adjudication program. We're now going to expand into a post-adjudication program. Somebody who's motivated, amenable to treatment, wants help. Yeah, maybe they have a long list of criminal behavior in the past, convictions, but the need to address that underlying issue is still there. It's prevalent and necessary that this person has an opportunity to be helped. So we are expanding into this post-adjudication model. What does that mean? And what we've also understood is what that means is a lot of human resources behind it. People need to be engaged with. They need help. And the people in the greatest need the greatest amount of help. Part of our funding, we've gone to the county and they've given us the green light to fund 2 new positions, both in our probation department. So our probation department's going to grow. It's in the process of growing from 3 to 5 people. And those 2 new people will be entirely engaged in therapeutic services. So it's amazing. Now, one of the questions our county commissioners asked us was, well, you're funding it now with this state money. How's it going to be in the future? Well, I have this problem when they call me up and they say, will you volunteer to be on this committee or that committee? And I say yes. And because, how do you say no to a good cause? Well, one of the committees that I've said yes to is our therapeutic court committee. And so I'm fortunate enough to be involved in the ground floor of what's coming next. The ask of our state legislature is to double the funding that brought us $500,000, to double that. I don't know if that will bring us $1 million in the next biennium or the next calendar year, or what have you, but it will bring more money our way, and it's going to help fund some of the other programs that went unfunded. Maybe they were already established and they didn't need it. But this is the future. This is where we are headed with our courts, especially at the district court level. We are identifying people in need, and we're helping those people to help us all to make our communities safer and better places to live. I've reached the end of my notes. Aren't you all
Thank you very
glad?
much.
Yeah, questions. I'd be happy to field some
I have
questions.
a couple of questions because we have
Yes,
a
sir.
number of presentations tonight. So
Yeah, my
can-
apologies.
Nathan?
Thank you, Judge.
Hi.
Hi. Great presentation. Good job on everything that's going on, especially with the staff. I know how important that is. My question is, the therapeutic court is extremely important, and mental health has been a huge thing that I've been involved in, and as you know, Annie Pillars is as well. Do you or your staff go through any sort of mental health first aid training? This has been something I feel it's important as a judge, as a council member, elected official staff. So what kind of training do you go through for that?
Well, that's a good question. The director of our probation services and I will be attending a state training in October. There's a federal or national association training that's once a year. We missed it this year. We'll be there next year. So the training will be ongoing. Excellent question. Yes, it's necessary. Some of the vernacular used in court, whether or not you wear your robe or not, whether or not you sit on the bench elevated or sit next to them. All these things are very important little minor issues that you wouldn't know without some of that training. I applaud Pullman PD has undergone extensive training. All law enforcement ought to, and I think they are. It's a collective effort, and absolutely, and I know Marlene just remind me, have you signed up for that training? And yes, it's an ongoing process, and we're both excited and recognize that's a necessary investment of our time.
Thank you for your enlightened approach.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Thank you very much.
That's it. Hey, you can find me on the website. Email me any stuff you have. Anybody else, and be love to visit about it. And thank you again for having us. Sorry if brevity's not my strong suit. Let's be honest, but we moved on. Thanks for having us. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. With that comes next our climate change survey report from the Palouse Citizens Climate Lobby, Judy Mirth and Cruz. So.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Johnson and council members, and thank you so much for the opportunity tonight to present on our Pullman Climate Change Survey. We came here about a year ago to tell you about the survey that we put together, and tonight we're going to go over the results. My name is Kyna Witters-Hicks, and tonight I'll be presenting with Judy Muth. We are both members of the Palouse Citizens Climate Lobby, which is a grassroots, nonpartisan, all-volunteer advocacy organization working to ensure a livable and thriving future for our community and the world. And the survey was conducted all by volunteers from this organization, some of which are in the audience tonight. So I want to start by thanking the city and acknowledging that Pullman has already set a climate change or a goal to reduce its impact on climate change. and it has already taken some steps to realize this vision, such as installing LED streetlights, purchasing electric buses, and posting on social media about our survey to encourage participation. The purpose of our survey was threefold: to understand awareness and knowledge of climate change, gauge concern for potential local and global impacts of climate change, and to better understand willingness to support local action. We completed the survey in fall of 2021, and we had 415 respondents who aligned pretty closely with Pullman's demographics when we compared that information with Pullman census data. And we've put together a report and the raw survey findings for each question on our website, cclpoluce.org. To give you the Cliff Notes version of our results and what we're going to talk about tonight, we found that most respondents are concerned about climate change, and they want the city to lead on climate action. Many people suggested ways to act, and many respondents indicated a willingness to contribute to solutions by volunteering their time and expertise. So to dive into a little bit more detail, 88% of respondents said they are concerned about climate change now and its impacts on future generations. A minority of respondents, about 6%, said they are aware of climate change but unconcerned. Additionally, we had 94% of respondents say that they think climate change will affect Pullman, and 70% said they think climate change will impact Pullman in large ways. We also asked respondents to give specific examples of impacts of concern, and we got over 300 responses, which we then grouped into 7 different broad categories. And I'm going to touch on each of those categories tonight just to give you a flavor of what we heard. So the impacts that we heard the most about is health. And respondents said that their health is impacted by wildfire smoke and dust pollution, heat waves, greater disease transmission from animals. And we heard many stories such as this one. With changing climates, especially this past summer's heat dome, I had to rescue one elderly neighbor unaware of the danger that she was in. Under water insecurity, one respondent said, "This year has shown that the Grand Ronde Aquifer needs immediate recharge solutions. Climate change will make this more urgent each year." And for weather and climate, respondents were concerned about extreme weather events, more heat domes, ice storms, and floods, such as the one portrayed in this picture from the 2019 flood in downtown Pullman. Another category of impact that we heard a lot about fell under agriculture. People were worried about weather unpredictability, drought, and more pests, making farm management more difficult. For example, one respondent said, weather variability and temperatures may require farmers to change farming procedures and crops, and thus increase the already difficult farm management situation. Another topic was economic insecurity. Respondents talked about inequities and unsafe housing in extreme conditions, insurance rates going up, and perceived higher costs of switching to greener sources of energy. And a similar category was facilities preparedness, which includes increased energy demand, unreliability, and costs, facilities not ready for extreme events. For instance, one respondent said, many residents don't have air conditioning, and even those who have the means to add it will use additional energy. And finally, environment, where respondents are concerned for loss of native plant and animal species, such as pollinators. and I quote, "loss of insects as pollinators and as an essential part of the ecosystem will have far-reaching impacts." So I'm now going to turn it over to Judy, who's going to talk about agency to address climate change and the role for city leadership.
Thanks, Kynan. And thank you, Mayor Johnson and council members, for having us here and giving us the opportunity to present. As Kynan said, the people who are responding to the survey want action. They are ready to do something about it because they are concerned. They talked about all kinds of local concerns. And although they said that they see a lot of local impacts happening, they also said, we also believe that the humans here and across the world have the ability to address climate change, to reduce it, and to lessen its impacts. In fact, 80% of the respondents said that they are not only personally ready for action, but they wanted the city to lead in addressing climate action. As one person noted here, most folks really care and want to change, but they need governance and collective action to feel empowered to change. When the survey queried people and said, well, what kinds of actions do you want the city to take? They responded with literally hundreds of suggestions. And so we wandered through those and began to categorize them into bigger groups. They want actions, they said, that the city will take as a government, but they also want actions that will be community-wide. So they're looking for the entire community, city and residents, to move forward on climate action. And they're looking for actions that mitigate climate action, that is, that actually address the causes of it, reduce the causes, and they want actions for adaptation, and those would be the ones that would help to lessen the impacts effect on Pullman and on its residents. In some of these examples I'm going to give for both mitigation and adaptation, you'll see that they could work on both of those categories. In mitigation, the area that got the most comments that people suggested need action was energy. And one person was talked about construction and said we need to subsidize old construction and or require new construction to have energy efficient appliances and solar power when appropriate. So the buildings were discussed and other infrastructure, and other recommendations included the city increasing its investment in renewables and actually incentivizing residents and businesses to do the same. People called for carbon neutrality for city infrastructure. They want the city to realize financial benefits by taking climate actions, and even consider divestment from fossil fuels. Another sector that got a lot of responses was transportation, and people recommended here that the city have an all-electric fleet of vehicles, that there be more EV charging stations across town, there should be more public transportation, including a Pullman Moscow bus. And some of you may be as old as I am and remember we used to have a Pullman Moscow bus, and people are looking for that again. Yep. And they're hoping for less vehicle use in general. One person said, quote, include more walk-only zones, more bike-safe areas, design neighborhoods for walkability, and promote work-from-home infrastructure like high-speed internet, end quote. A third area under mitigation was education and public participation. And one respondent suggested establish education and outreach programs that explain climate mitigation and adaptation to all citizens, including children and college students and adults of all ages, end quote. Respondents also called for workshops and forums where the community can learn about climate actions that the city can take and that they can take. And they can also give the city input so that there's ongoing communication and they can let the city know what they want or what they don't want. Respondents also called for a resident participation in a committee that would plan climate actions for Pullman. In fact, 80 respondents said they would be interested in finding out about that committee and perhaps serving on it. in terms of adaptation, and this is where the actions would actually try to lessen the impacts of climate change on Pullmanites and on Pullman. The first area that people talked about was services. One person said we need to create better safety nets for our communities when people are adversely affected by climate change. And others also suggested that the city provide shelter for extreme events, that they have a fund for those in crisis, that the city somehow offer more affordable housing, give assistance for buying air conditioners and air filters, and find ways to reduce poverty in Pullman. In the environment also had a lot of folks speak to it. Increasing green spaces and increasing trees in general was a big piece of what they were talking about. One person said plant more trees downtown and support the founding of community gardens. People also called for restoration of all stream banks, improving the recycling systems, and supporting local ag so that local ag can help improve soil health. And then the final sector I'm going to talk about here, but there are more in the report, but we're restricted by time, is water. And as Kynan mentioned, what people were concerned about water, about the aquifer particularly, they want to ensure availability of water and good quality water. So they are asking for many kinds of actions. One of them was to, quote, increase the cost of water in summer months to encourage water conservation and to provide money for greening projects. Respondents also recommended a number of different kinds of rewards and regulations that would help people change their water habits and help businesses change and help the city change. In particular things they spoke to were increasing gray water use and increasing drought-resistant landscaping. So as you can see, just from these examples here, and there are many more in the report, people had ideas across the board, and they want to see action. There's more information about these particular ideas and more in the report. And as Kynan said, the full report is on the CCL website. That's at cclpalouse.org, and it's under resources. And so you can see all the information there, both the concerns, the knowledge, the suggestions for action. Not only is there this large bank of ideas that people offered to the city about what they think should be done, but there are all kinds of other resources that Pullman can tap as it moves forward, continuing its climate actions and actually growing its commitment as it stated it would in the comprehensive plan. The resources are many, and some of them are just our sister cities. Bellingham, Walla Walla, Spokane, Eugene, Oregon, Corvallis, Oregon, everybody's in this process. And so there are so many ways that we can share information, that people can share their best practices, and nobody has to reinvent the wheel. There are also nonprofit organizations that are working on this. The National League of Women Voters has just finished a study that came out with the best 10 ways that a city can reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, and that's obviously available to any city. Governments at every level have tools that they are offering cities to use, so the state, the federal government, counties even are doing that same thing. There are grant monies, public and private, and sometimes they're very specific for like an electric bus, but sometimes they are something that is more broad, where a city can say, we need money to set this climate action plan in place, or we need money to collect data on the carbon footprint of a particular sector. But those monies are out there, and we could apply for them. And then, of course, there's that local expertise that I just mentioned, where you have many people in the community who already say, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and jump in and help. I've got some knowledge, some expertise, and I've got time, and I'm willing to be involved. So, we really appreciate the ability to work with the city and Pullman residents on this project. We learned a tremendous amount, and hope you get a chance to look at the full report, because it does have so much information that we can use as we go forward. it's really important for all of us, I think, because it's a project that's going to take everybody working together, and we're ready to help if we can do that. So thank you very much, and we're ready to take questions if anybody has a question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Comments? Okay. Nathan?
Judy, I just wanted to recognize all the efforts you, CCL, Blue CCL has done. I know we've talked about this, sat in on a few of your meetings, but it's just amazing, the advocacy and the real methodical process that you've taken to make sure that this is, the community and it's feedback from the community. So I appreciate all of your efforts. You were never bulldozing this. You wanted to get the feedback, and you brought the data, and it's a great read, and it's a lot of great information. So I just wanted to say from my heart, thank you so much for your efforts.
You're welcome.
And everybody on there.
Thank you.
Francis?
Thank you. So I appreciate this data. I think it's very important for us to have data in order to make wise decisions and as we move forward. One thing that would help me with this data is in some places in the report you talk about the respondents, and there's other places you talk about the Pullman community. And when I did a deeper dive into the data, you didn't list it on the report to us, but I went to your deeper data, and it showed that 75% of the people that responded were from Pullman or identified that as their place. 25% were not, approximately 25. Now, when you made references related to Pullman citizens, did you separate out that data? So it looked like the data was mixed most of the time, and I'm just trying to help understand as I'm looking at the data as we move forward.
We did not. We talked about it and decided that that 25% was most likely WSU students, and we couldn't correlate exactly that. But in our in the census, for instance, if somebody who is going to WSU and is living here for 4 years or 6 or whatever says, I'm a Pullman resident, that's how the census counts them as a Pullman resident. So we tried to follow that pattern.
Okay, thank you. It just helps me as I look at that data. Thank you.
Eileen?
Yeah, thanks, Judy and friends. This has been near and dear to my heart. I've been serving on PBAC for quite a few years now. And this highlights the interest that our citizens, our residents have in this issue. And I would like to suggest that we have better communication between the City of Pullman and Citizens Climate Lobby, because many of the things you recommend are already in the works, are already being accomplished. So rather than maybe kind of tread over one another, we can get to know each other better and move forward on some of these things that are already in process, the things that we can do, and wring our hands over the things that we can't do communally. And yeah, so let's try and improve that communication between the two entities and help each other understand what is being done and what's working really well, and then our efforts go in the best direction. Thanks, Judy.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next presentation tonight comes from Fire Chief Mike Heston. And I believe you all have a handout here in front of you, too.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So Mike Urban asked me to do a presentation on the Everbridge system. So I'm new to this one. So being our emergency disaster coordinator, it's a communication program that we use in the area. So I just put a few slides together to talk about it. And it's called Everbridge. There's many companies out there that do this for mass communication for communities. So it's basically a mass communication system for the public, and we can use it on different incidences as well. So we could create something specific for a flood, specific for active shooter, or whatever. So this company's been around since 2002. And it basically takes critical events and puts out some kind of general notification to the public. And it's kind of like a reverse 911 system. So we basically choose a map of an area, and it calls the folks in that area and notifies them whatever message that we put out. It's funded by WSU and Whitman County. We just happen to be part of Whitman County, so WSU uses it the most, so they fund it the most. Those of you sign up with the WSU alerts, you probably get those periodically, and so that's the same system that they're using there. So the contacts, they utilize the white pages basically to download the information. So if you have a hard landline phone, it gets automatically downloaded into there. If you buy a cell phone tomorrow, it's not going to get in there unless you actively go on there and sign up for it. So there are some limitations to that. And the other limitation would be the data purge. So lots of old data in there when I was looking through it. I even had phone numbers for myself from 20 years ago that don't even use anymore. Fire alarm systems, security systems, anything that has a hard landline has been put into the system and that hasn't been updated. So WSU does have an advantage for theirs because they can redo their system each year. They have a captive audience. They can take out the old and put the new in. So this is what we have for Whitman County. So almost 18,000 contacts that are on there. White pages, they pulled 14,000. So the Whitman County residents, 3,800 of those typically. So there's quite a few. It hasn't been broken down on how many residents are actually from Pullman, but you can assume Pullman being the most populous community in the county, we have the most data in there at the moment. So that's what we have on record right now for this program. It's cloud-based, so we can be used mobilely with my phone, with my computer. I don't have to be in my office to do this, which is the beauty of this program. It uses 20 different ways to notify folks. The most common ones, and that's what we use as well, is texting, emails, cell phones, landlines. You can connect up with social media, and you can use the Everbridge app if you have that as well. So there's another way to do that. So it kind of hits the first message, gives it some time. If there's no response back from that, it goes to the next message. So you could sign up for all 6 of these if you wanted to, if you had these capabilities. So it can include two-way communication. It can also ask questions like, are you okay? Are you safe? Do you need help? It can ask those kinds of things if it's being used that way. We can send out documents like maps if we need to, or photos of the areas. This is the map of the water issue that we had. So Matt Young in communications at the city sent that out, so we could send that out for folks to see as well as a visual, whatever other media we do. It has preset templates that we can put together with different types of emergencies and situations, so we can get together and figure out what verbiage we want to use and have a common language, so we're using common terms, so it can be set up that way as well. We can notify folks by individuals if we want, by groups, by different rules, like if we have certain people trained in certain areas, if they sign up that way, we can do that, or by maps, which is kind of the most common. Or even by cell tower areas. So if we have a cell tower area where the activity's going on, even folks driving into that will be notified because their phone's connecting into that cell tower. So we have that capability as well to do that. So we can send stuff out right away, immediately, or we can send it later or at different specified intervals if we want. It can be incident specific. We can provide updates. We can provide all clears, and that's one thing we did with the water situation we had, and I got some more data on that here in a second. It can go out in different languages, and the key is to have short and concise messages using common terminology to go out. So it has different ways that when I send it out, I can send it out by text. I'm limited by like 160 characters, so I have to take the message that the city has, condense it down to make it fit using the key words, and then I can also use a long message to put into an email. So depending on how you sign up, you're going to get a little bit different format of message when it comes out. So there's different ways to do that. It also provides pie chart results showing real-time feedback, and I have an example of that coming up to see how the data is going out, how it's being received. It can also be activated by the WSU folks or Whitman County. They're all trained in doing that. So like if I'm not available, I could call them and they could send it out as well. So and vice versa, we can help each other with that. So since we're all kind of on the same system. So, and they have access to that. So basically we are piggybacking onto the Whitman County license. So that's kind of how we're doing it. So. And the city also has a dedicated line as well. We have a phone number that we could call, put our own message on there that we've used in the past as well. So We had different ways to get that information out to the public. This was the water boil advisories, so that I sent out for this when we kind of worked together on what the message was. Just by mapping out the area that map you saw with the water area, it was just under 2,500 contacts. It took about an hour for it to go out totally, for it to hit all the medias that people have signed up for, but it does go out in seconds. And then if you look at that, the 293 are the ones that confirmed with 22 late. So just over 300 folks is what this system reached. If you look at the unreachable and the non-confirmed, that's all the data that's in there that kind of needs to be scrubbed over the years it's been put into the system. So, and what I've been told, if you reach 10% of the folks when you send this out, that is a success if you send out 10%. So this is like 13% of the folks were reached when we sent it out to this area. So working with the county, we don't have a really good way to scrub out that old data, but it's still folks that can get them to sign up and that have landlines, then it would reach those folks for that. And we're working on kind of getting folks to sign up for different emergencies if they can get on there. There's a site on our city's website that has that. So, and there's the website for that. There's a QR code for that. So we're trying to work with Matt Young and trying to get that information out to folks so we can start signing up for that. So, you know, there are some limitations with this, with the data that's out there. How do we reach folks? There's so many ways to reach folks out there. And what do they use for communications in a timely manner? So, so those are all things we're working on. So that's it in a nutshell. So entertain any questions.
Okay, question. Eileen.
Yeah, I want to thank Chief Heston for spending a good half hour with me on the phone this afternoon, answering some specific questions that I had. And the recent incident we had with the water kind of helped us diagnose some of the challenges that we have with this system. And we touched on a few. I got the phone message. Mine came up as spam. I just picked it up because I wanted to hush up the phone, and it came through as, otherwise I would not have answered it. So we need to, Mike's going to look into that and see if we can sort that out. The other challenge I had, and maybe it's just me, was that the automated voice on the phone was really difficult to understand. I had listened to it 3 times before I could get the message. So that's another area that Mike's going to help us out with. And so we've got a great, we've got good responses. We've got some good data here now, so we can start looking at some of these individual challenges as we move forward and polish this thing up, and it'll be right as rain for all of us. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, you bet. I talked to Bill Tensfield, which is the county manager on that, and he said it shouldn't come out as spam, and it should come over clear. So I don't know if there's something wrong with the signal, but definitely something we can test and work together. And I've been working with Matt on different ways to how do we get this message out to folks in a timely manner and working together. So, and Matt and I will both do some more training on this as well, so we can kind of be partners on this as well.
The first message that had the breakout there, my wife said that it came through very clear. It was the second one that sounded very computerish, and she said she had to listen to it several times just to understand. She knew what the message was,
right?
But just to listen to it, and it didn't come through very clear at all. And we saw also spam as well. I knew the numbers were coming out, and I got hit from all kinds of different sources because we've been, we signed up for it. And it's very important for the public to sign up for these things. So that's another thing.
Yeah.
Francis,
Thank
next.
you. A couple questions. On your graph, when you're talking about the confirmed versus not confirmed, if someone gets the phone call but doesn't press the key to say they've received it, but they just hang up, does that fall in the confirmed or is they not confirmed?
That I don't know. I don't know. I'm still
asks,
new to all this, so I'd have to look it up and see what that means. So,
so because it asks, you to confirm that you've received this, and I'm just wondering, if someone just listens to it and hangs up. That was my first one. The next one is this something that is the system based on a particular phone number, an association to a phone number, or is it based on a location? I'm thinking about individuals that may have a home, they may also have a business, and wanting to be able to register all of those locations. How is it set up to be able to do those different types
when we set it up, we actually choose the map area that's affected by it. So, and if you sign up, when you sign up and you put your address associated to that type of response, whether it's your phone or email, that's what it's going to send to. So
So you just sign up more than once, but put in different addresses, but could have the same phone number.
It could, yes. Yep, yep. We just draw the map and whatever's in there goes. So it is set up where you could do it different ways, where you could hit different businesses, but that would take some time to do that.
Yeah. Well, and part of that is I was a judge for an app challenge in Seattle, and one of the things that they had set up was a similar system to this, but it was one where business owners could actually show where their businesses are, and then it would automatically give all the police calls within 2 blocks of that business, so that the business owner was just aware of what police activity was happening in the area. And what they did is they delayed the police calls by like 20 to 30 minutes, so you just didn't have looky-loos that were just going to follow what was going on type of a thing.
Yeah, it does have the capability where you could do circles and zones and draw triangles. You could do all kinds of things with the mapping. So this program, there's a lot of other good programs out there as well, and I do know the county and WSU are looking to see what's out there. They have a contract with this Everbridge till the end of 23, so right now they're looking at it to see what's out there, what works, what makes it easy to do. So typically dispatch centers are the ones that usually put this kind of stuff out, and emergency managers. So, and they're very good at what they do to get it out there. So, but you got to be careful what you're doing, because you can reach out and touch folks you don't need to be doing, like the wildland fire that they had a while back this summer in Colfax. They set it up to hit some cell phone towers, and it hit the cell phone tower that clear over Moscow. So you got all these folks that are contacted that didn't need to be contacted, which you can imagine what it creates for extra phone calls to dispatch.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Just one more comment. Thank you, Chief, and thanks to Matt Yun, who continues to prove his value for the communications aspect of the city. And I just want to say thank you for dogging the technical issues. These systems have technology issues. They'll continue to have them, and we just have to keep working on them. But would love to see more people sign up for this. It's a really valuable resource.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a campaign for that. So I don't think Matt knows how valuable he really is just yet. So until it hits the fan for sure. So.
All right. Thank you very much, Chief.
You bet.
Appreciate it. With that, our next item on the agenda is public comment. This is public comment for anything that we're going to take on final action during today's meeting. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment on final action that we're doing? With that, seeing none, we will move on. Now the consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature. The council's had a chance to study these ahead. Do I hear a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Thad O'Sullivan, our city attorney.
There's a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 13, 2022, and approve them as submitted. A motion to authorize a lodging tax grant to the City of Pullman Strategic Tourism Work Group in the amount of up to $25,000 for the professional services of Arnett, Muldrow, and Associates for creating a unifying place brand for the Pullman community. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable, checks numbered 107859 through 107861, totaling $241.86. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable, checks numbered 107862 through 107879, electronic transfers 77, 78, 903, and 909 through 914, payroll direct deposits numbered 79414 through 79753, totaling $1,483,272.53. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable, checks numbered 107880 through 107966, and void check number 107845 totaling $368,557.94. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 107967 through 108041 totaling $1,264,451.42. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 108042 through 108044 and void check number 107078 totaling $1,876.66. Motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable electronic funds transfer numbered 8252022 totaling $54,249.23. Motion to approve the purchase of 5 new 2023 police vehicles. And finally, Resolution R-59-22, a resolution authorizing the execution of a Washington State Department of Ecology grant application for the Decant Facility Project, authorizing the acceptance and execution of the grant agreement if awarded, and other matters related thereto.
Is there any item the council would like out for discussion?
Yes, I'd like to pull item number 2.
Okay, any others? With that, the consent agenda consists of items 1 and 3 through 10. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, item 2?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I just wanted to update the council on exactly what this grant was about. And if all of you, as well as our constituents, recall, gosh, it's almost about 2 months ago now, the mayor put together a strategic tourism work group, which consists of 3 of us from council and a number of other stakeholder groups. And one of the things that we did initially is to go through all of the items that were identified for implementation in this plan. And we prioritized all of those, and the number 1 priority was to establish branding for the city of Pullman so that we have a unifying place brand that can be utilized across groups, across departments, across entities, across stakeholders, just so that when people see that brand, they automatically know it's Pullman. Trip Muldrow, who is one of the principals of one of the groups that put this strategic tourism plan together for us, specializes in place branding. And he had already done a workshop for us in June that was heavily attended and very well received. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't lose the momentum that came out of that group. And so we got in touch with Tripp to talk with him in terms of what could he do for us in driving this unifying place brand. And so what you see in the tourism packet or the lodging tax grant packet that you have is his proposal. And what I would like to do tonight is answer any questions, should you have any. And if you don't, that I would like to recommend that the council accept the grant application as presented to fund that proposal from Tripp. That will, should that be accepted, his work will start, well, a lot of it has actually already started, but it will start in Pullman the week of October 17th. So, and there will also be a presentation made to council at that time. So, as I say with that, I would like to, as part of the Lodging Tax Committee, recommended that this come forward to you for approval. And so I guess I would like to have a motion, if I could, to accept this plan as presented.
So moved. Trip is the best.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat, and for all your hard work too on this. This has been a lot of extra hours, I know that. We now move to the public hearing on the revenue sources for 2023. And with that, multi-hat Mike Urban, City Administrator, filling in for Finance, and we all appreciate all the extra work you've been doing.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So before you tonight is the public hearing on the revenue sources, and already realized the first mistake there, 2023. So Chapter 251, Laws of 1995 in RCW 8455-120 does require a public hearing be conducted before revenue sources for the coming year budget, and that also includes consideration of a possible increase to property taxes. Notice of this public hearing was published in the city's paper of record on September 17th and 24th, as well as using Mr. Matt Young, who's been discussed several times here tonight, putting this through social media so it's touched on several different avenues. Now, although the city has adopted a biennial budget process beginning in 2019, property tax levies still need to be set on a yearly basis and needs to be turned into the Whitman County assessor on or before November 30th of each year. The City Council did adopt a budget calendar earlier in the process on the budget, and it does have on November 15th setting of the property tax levies. So this hearing is timely ahead of that meeting for consideration. This is the moment where I need to spend a little time talking about implicit price deflator a little bit. I'm going to try a different way and hope I do better this time than the last time I did this, so I certainly apologize. The state passed legislation that allows local organizations, municipalities, to increase their property taxes by whichever is greater, 1% or the implicit price deflator, or IPD. And all IPD is another measurement of inflation. This is the one that the state has adopted. So if IPD is 4%, the maximum that the city can do is 1%. If it's negative or below 1%, the IPD would be the most that the city would be able to take, unless the council declared a special need and passed a resolution to that effect, allowing them to go up then to the 1%. So if cost of goods were still going up, even though the implicit price deflator was low, council could take action to still take that 1%, which that has happened in the past with councils even since I've been here. The IPD is not below 1 this year for inflation reasons, as everybody can imagine. So that's my piece on that. I have another slide coming up in the preview where we talk just a little bit about how the 1% has worked out over the last 25 years versus what IPD has been doing. Okay. Any questions before I get started? All right, here we go. First item up for discussion is our general fund, the status of that. We talk a lot about the general fund around here because this is where our police department, our fire department, library, parks, recreation, finance, HR, legal are all funded out of the general fund. Of the 90 different BARS numbers in the general fund, these 8 make up approximately 3/4 of the revenue. So I bring these to you as kind of a general summary, talk about where we actually ended 2021, what was budgeted for 22, where we sat mid-year, where we think we're going to end up at the end of the year, and then some preliminary numbers towards the 2023 budget. So at the top, that first line you see is the total general fund. And we are, the year-end estimate is certainly coming in over the previously budgeted amount for 2022. And since we do that biennial budget, we were doing that budget right as COVID was hitting. So, you know, taking real small approach to revenues because we didn't know what we were getting into. And we had some strong sales tax during COVID, as we remember. And then part of all of this are the next 8 funds. So this isn't in addition, this just breaks down that first item. Property taxes, you can see where those are coming through. The MS levy, sales tax, we talk a lot about. I do send regular emails to council to update you on collections. Admissions tax for movies and stadium events. Building permits, you can see 2021 was very, very strong. Year-to-date is still doing well, too. I've talked to our head of the building inspections, and since there's a code change coming up at the end of the year, he expects it to be a strong end of the year as everybody applies to get under the existing code before they have to meet any new codes. And then we always touch on liquor tax and profits as well as the marijuana tax. Any questions on this before I move on to the next fund? Francis?
I actually have on 2 of them. One is the utility tax, where we're expected to collect less than what we did last year, but we're budgeting more in 2023. Is it just we're expecting we're going to catch up on, is that past due, or is it we're just expecting that there's going to be that much of an increase, even though this year it's a decline from the previous year for utility tax?
Sure, a lot of that had to do with the students returning this fall, as opposed to not being here first part of last year during
Compensating
coming over. So the compensation from that, as well as discussion that the council is going to have later tonight about raising the utility fees. So the tax portion of that too will trickle over to not only the general fund, but the streets fund as well as transit.
Great. And then the second one is the admission tax. That seems like a big bump from this year to next year compared to last year to this year. Is there something that you're seeing that we should expect related to this?
Yeah, the philosophy when we were setting this up on admissions tax originally during the budget is we were expecting nobody in the stadiums in 2021 and then half capacity in 2022 because of COVID. We recovered a little bit quicker, so we're having a little better collection. However, the movie business has been a little bit of a struggle, not only because people are, still trying to find their way on that, but because they couldn't film movies. There's no backlog of stuff ready to go, and things are hitting streaming so fast nowadays.
Great, thank you.
You bet. Okay. Okay. Next piece here is Public Works. I've grouped a few of them together, the 104 and 105 Streets Fund, you can see, 401, 403, and 404 Utilities, and the 405 Transit. So very similar to the last slide. If you look down these, the 4 items that make up the Streets Fund is about 99% of the collections for that fund. The 1 item that you see under Utilities, that's about 93% of the collections. And the 4 items under Transit, that's also about 99% of the collections for that fund, just in those bars numbers. But overall, some things of note. Real estate excise tax in 2021, very high. Year to date, on that already budgeted, came in over budget. And one of the things that helps move that property tax on the first slide is when a house sells, the property taxes need to be settled. So that's why we don't collect an exact 50-50. That's why usually the front end sometimes comes in a little higher, as well as some people do just pay all their property taxes in April. So real estate excise tax is a good indicator that that's what's going on. For the utilities, charges for goods and services, that's the pure charges that you'll be talking about a little bit later. The tax on those do trickle to other places. One of them, or they're actually both on this, the utility tax is the first line under 104 and as well as under 405. And then, of course, charges for goods and services on the last line on transit. Any questions on this slide? Got a couple of little miscellaneous funds too that we track along that council always stays interested in. I just want to touch on those. The first one's the 120 Civic Improvement Fund. That's where our lodging tax goes to. So again, very similar to Francis's question earlier when we were anticipating what might happen with attendance at games and other things. That represented the lodging tax as well. We thought that there would be less people coming to town until COVID really turned the corner. That happened sooner here. The Firefighters Relief and Pension Fund, this is funded by state fire tax and a tax from the state on fire insurance to help offset retirement and pensions, especially for those pre-left firefighters. So that's a once a year deposit. And then I always like to touch here on the debt service fund, the $1,043,343. That's what is collected to pay back the A bond and the B bond. That dollar amount is not affected by a 1% increase as more billable or more new construction comes on to the rolls. It spreads the responsibility out across more people. But when we talk about 1%, that doesn't include the 218. 108 Metropolitan Parks, we're going to have a separate hearing in a second, so I'll come back to this slide and touch on it for just a half a second later. Any questions on this slide? Okay. Time for charts and graphs. So this is a visual representation of how we go over and collect our sales tax on a yearly basis. So you can kind of see if there's a seasonal trend or a yearly trend. We've had a couple outliers, as you can see as well. The line that we're looking at right now is the black line. That's 2022. And as you can see, sales tax collections are a little higher than usual. Can't really determine if that's a difference in increased sales or increased sales coupled with inflation, so collecting more on a higher price on the same item. The state doesn't allow us to break it down that way, so really we need to talk to our local vendors anecdotally and say, what are you guys seeing here? Shoot, that's kind of where sales tax is, and I do present monthly updates to council whenever we collect the sales tax. Your next update will be on Monday. We collect 2 months in arrears because at the end of July, the vendors have the opportunity to put together their reports, send the stuff in by a date in August, I believe is the 25th, and then the state uses September to rectify all their records and then send us the money. So whenever we talk about it, we're always collecting 2 months in advance, but what you're seeing here is the actual month in which it was collected. So we can look at, well, what did football season actually look like? We can go and look at September and see if there was a little bump or not. Any questions on this one? Okay. Next piece, as it relates directly to assessed value for the city of Pullman, you can see how we have grown from an assessed value of $747 million in 2002 to over $2.2 billion here in 2022. And that, again, is assessed value of taxable property, so that's not going to include your government buildings, hospitals, churches, schools, those types of things. Pullman represents 47% of all of Whitman County's assessed value. Any questions on this slide? Okay. So when you get your property tax bill, it goes to many other places other than the city of Pullman. So right now, for 2022, your property is assessed at $14 and a little more than 82 cents per $1,000. And as you can see, there's a piece that goes out there for the Port of Whitman County, as well as the hospital district. Whitman County gets $1.52 of that. The state, a lot of that for schools, $3.43. Then there's the city of Pullman, and this includes all the collections. This is the Metro Parks District, this is the EMS levy, the regular, as well as the bond repayment. And then at the top there is School District 267. They're collecting $4 and almost 86 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. So if we get to talking about a 1% property tax increase, we're not talking, I'm not doing anything for the other organizations. We're talking about the City of Pullman's piece of collection. Okay. Any questions on this one? Okay, implicit price deflator is back for another look. I went back and I remember when this happened in my past life, and we used to, in the past, be able to collect at a 6% increase, and in 1998, that got changed and they limited those increases to 1%. And what you see there on that blue line is the value of $1,000 year over year at a maximum of 1%. And what you see there in the red line is your implicit price deflator. And if that would have been collected instead of the 1%, what would happen? And as you can see, the gap is starting to get very big, and we're getting kind of close to hitting critical mass as far as talking about services, programs, or people. This year, we're making things work, but the staff's really, I've been on them and they're sharpening their pencils, and we're there. But the 1% is certainly creating a larger challenge as the years go by, especially as you see what happened there going from 21 to 22. And the number I had in there for 22 was 3.86%. And if you remember from my agenda item, they didn't publish the IPD until Monday. It's actually published now. It's not 3.86%, it's 6.457% is the implicit price deflator of record for 2023. That's the highest it's been if you look at the different amounts. And this is the first time it's actually crossed the 6% line that used to be taken back in the day. Okay. Any questions on this one? Okay. So when we talk about property tax levies and the 1%, here's the graph that we like to use. So right now, the 2022 levy is represented in that first column. If we take a 1% on the existing amount, that would equate between the three, $89,011.44, making our new totals there in the third column. New construction, council could take, should take, is recommended to take new construction every year as well. Here's stuff that has just come up. Let's get it on the tax rolls instead of not. That is not going to be provided to us until mid-October. There's a lot going on up at the assessor's office. They need some extra time. We'll pass that on as soon as the information becomes available. The average over the last 2 years, it was about 214,000 for these items. So there is a lot of new construction that's been going on, and judging by the way the building permits had been issued, I think we're going to be very much in that same range. So I'll keep you posted as that piece comes up. Any questions? Okay, almost there.
If you can go back on that one, the final column over the difference is, so the differences are 1% then?
The difference,
okay, great.
yeah, the difference between the total and the original. So normally there would be new construction in here.
I was calculating between the wrong columns.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Next steps, hold a public hearing for the City of Pullman revenue sources. And then I'm going to jump back in after we go through that process, and we'll talk about Metropolitan Parks District. I'll make that a lot quicker because we handled a lot of this already. Staff believes that we can continue to maintain the previously approved budget calendar. We're working real hard to get you guys a document you could start reviewing. Calculations for property taxes on new construction, as soon as we get them, we'll push those forward and let you know what that means. Later in October, we'll make some phone calls. In addition, property tax collections, everybody's second half property taxes are due by October 31st. Treasurer's office certainly needs some time to take that all in, put them to the right accounts. We'll get a report mid-November, certainly before the public hearing, I think on November 15th, to say, yeah, here's where property taxes have come in for the year. And we will always collect our property taxes, either this year or down the road when the treasurer's office needs to go through their process of foreclosures. The minimum starting price for any foreclosure is always the property taxes owed on it. And then I'll continue providing regular sales tax collection updates. Next week, you'll be getting the July numbers. End of October, you'll be seeing August. And then maybe by the time we meet on the 29th of November, I might have September's numbers. I'd say there's a better than 50-50 chance. It all depends how quick the state puts those out. So that's the end of my presentation. Is there any questions before Mayor opens for public hearing?
Okay,
Okay,
at this
thank
time, we have an open public hearing. Anyone who would like to make comments on the revenue sources for the presentations you've just seen? Does anybody would like to make a comment on that? Going once, twice, we close that public hearing. At this point, we're going to adjourn the meeting of the City Council. We're going to convene the meeting of the Metropolitan Park District. We have already taken roll, except now they're called commissioners and not council members. And so with that, we go to the revenue sources. Again, Mike Urban.
Good evening, Commissioners. So before you again is very much the same thing. Really the biggest difference between what I've talked about, implicit price deflator is certainly an important part of this discussion because the Metropolitan Parks revenue source primarily is through a property tax. So as you can see there on the 108 fund, collections on the 2021 came in at 615, 2022 was budgeted at 596, and there was actually more new property that went on the tax rolls than we anticipated when that happened. So our year-end estimates are a higher collection amount, and based on a 1% increase, we're projecting that the amount that we're going to be able to collect in 2023 is $642,476 plus any new construction if the commissioners do take action on that. Okay. Any questions on the Metropolitan Parks piece?
At this point, we open the public hearing for any comments on the revenue sources for the Metropolitan Park District. Is there anyone who'd like to make any comments on the revenue sources? And once, twice, three times, now I closed that hearing of the Metropolitan Park District. Looking at the agenda, we also have at that point a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the Metropolitan Park District meeting of November 16th, 2021. Do I hear a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we now adjourn the meeting of the Metropolitan Park Districts. We reconvene the meeting of the Pullman City Council. And with that, we now move on from the public hearing.
Thank you.
And we now move to the regular agenda item. Item number 1, Sean Colts will be here, and we'll hear from Sean on a number of different items tonight. Our first one is a resolution adopting a fee schedule for the water utility code pursuant to the provisions of the Pullman City Code. And with that, Sean Coates, our Public Works Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A lot of the information in these utility rates increase requests are a repeat of the August 23rd council meeting, so you'll be familiar with some of the information. But starting off in particular with the water utility, first of all, I'd like to talk through, what are the public works utility services that are provided as a result of these revenues. So first of all, we have water system maintenance and operations. We've got all of our potable water supply that's provided through these services. We have our sewage collection and wastewater treatment systems, maintenance and operations, so all the sewage that gets flushed down the system, and then we treat that before it's discharged to the South Fork of the Palouse River. Our stormwater system, maintenance and operations, of course, every time we have a runoff event, we've got all that water that floods into our stormwater system and ultimately to our streams and rivers. So we collect that and treat that. And then lastly, all the engineering services that go into supporting these efforts. So the purpose of the proposed utility rate increases really comes down to one issue, and that's inflationary costs. Examples of recent inflation, again, common utility parts such as pipe and fittings, we've seen increases ranging from about 21% to 44% since 2021. Fuel, we've seen larger increases, 45% increase just over a year time frame, as well as 71% increase in diesel fuel costs. And of course, we use quite a bit of fuel in our operations. Energy costs, which of course we power our wastewater treatment plant, our water pump stations, our wells. Avista requested electric rates increase of 11%, and that's been broken into two phases, 7.9% in 2022 and 3.1% in 2023. The Consumer Price Index, since the last utility rate increases, so if we look at the water and sewer funds, the last rate increases were in 2019, and the CPI increase over that time frame was 15%. If we look at our stormwater fund, the last utility rate increase was in 2011, and the CPI was 31% since that time. However, many of our specific items, such as fuel and materials prices increases, have actually been higher than CPI. So I want to step back a little bit from the inflationary discussion and talk a little bit about utilities cost of service analysis. So typically when we complete a master plan effort, and we're very close to completing a master plan effort on our water system, once we've got all that information, it tells us, hey, this is where we're at today, and this is where we need to be within the next 20 years. So we know basically what costs we have to get there. So the intent will be that as soon as we complete that water system plan, we'll bring that to council for approval, and then we'll follow that with a cost of service analysis. And so we'll have a full-blown, detailed look of that, what it takes to fund that utility. And we'll be following that cost of service analysis on the water, on the sewer and stormwater side about a year after that. So to talk a little bit about budgets and capital plan impacts from inflation, you'll see reflected in the existing and the forthcoming budgets that we've had to cut budgets and postpone some projects due to the inflation impacts. We're already running a very tight operation with staffing and workload. So switching gears a little bit to talk about what we're requesting from the water utility and comparing that to some other Washington cities. So just focusing on the water for the first part of this discussion. If you look at Pullman compared to Wenatchee, and Wenatchee is about to increase their rates starting in January. Typical water bill in Wenatchee would be $45.65, in Ellensburg, $39.81. And then in Pullman are assuming that the 4.5% increase would be adopted tonight. A typical water bill would be $36.69 in the winter months. Now, of course, we've got a tiered rate structure in the summer months, so as people use more water, we want to encourage conservation. So we kind of penalize people a little bit for using extra water for irrigation, just to incentivize that water conservation. So our water bills are, of course, higher in the summertime. So in Wenatchee, that water bill stays the same from summer to winter. Ellensburg does go up a little bit, but we would have a higher water rate in the summertime. So the staff recommendation here is to adopt what I'll call a modest 4.5% utility rate increase compared to the inflationary rate. Or to adopt another direction from City Council on what that rate increase should be. But with that, I'd like to start with questions on the water utility rates.
Questions first. Okay, Nathan?
Well, I think it's a good idea. We need to keep up with inflation rate. However, I do have a question. You had 2 cities. Now, Walla Walla is sometimes compared. Do you have the numbers on those?
I don't. We reached out to a handful of other cities, but didn't get responses back in time for the meeting tonight, so these are the 2 that we got responses back from.
Okay, okay.
Eileen?
In the past, we've been faced with mandates from the state legislature about stormwater and sewage treatment and what levels of perfection that they ask for. Are we looking at anything like that in the upcoming legislature? Is there anything in the wind? Are we gonna get hit by another thing that's gonna be very difficult for us to handle?
Yeah, and a lot of that's driven by EPA requirements that, of course, filter through our State Department of Ecology, as well as our State Department of Health. On the water side, there's new regulation coming out to regulate what's called PFAS compounds. Luckily, because we tap the deep aquifer system, we're very unlikely to have those compounds, and we've done initial testing and have found no trace of it. So, and that's what we would expect. So, from the water utility, we're in pretty good shape. Of course, the biggest challenge that, of course, council knows about is that long-term water supply and building up a fund so that when we get to that point to develop that longer-term water supply, we're ready to take on that challenge financially. So that's part of the intent of increasing the rate too.
But no surprises coming from the other side of the drain.
Not on water.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question, because we face that every year. And the other thing is that you also mentioned earlier in terms of need for people to work on the valve exercising. And we did use, about 4 or 5 valves on this particular break we had on Grand Avenue.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And so one of the requests that you will see come through our budget will be the request for an additional FTE on our maintenance and operations team, and the intent of that FTE will be strictly to focus on exercising our water valves. Because what we found when we tried to close valves around that water main leak at Grand and Center was that we had to basically isolate 6 blocks, whereas ideally if all of our valves worked, we would have isolated 1 block. And so, it really impacts a lot more people if you have to chase those valves farther out in the system to be able to close off and isolate a leak. So, yeah, elements of our system like that, we really need to go after, and that's part of the intent too behind this increase.
Yeah. Megan?
Thanks, Sean, and I think our theme for tonight should be inflation, and that we need to keep up with it. It's painful, but we need to do it. And I would also like to see at the same time, and I know this is coming up, we have talked about this, but mandates for water usage and being more restrictive on that use in terms of lawn watering and really adopt what other cities have been doing for some time. And I think that needs to go hand in hand at the same time that we are looking at increasing rates. People need to feel that part of it as well.
No other comments? Oh, yes, okay. Ann?
Thank you. Sean, thank you for this. It's a very thoughtful and deliberate approach, and I very much appreciate it. And with our water use increasing by more neighborhoods being built and businesses coming into town, entities like Schweitzer growing, every one of those big buildings uses a lot of water, and the sewer system as well. So I very much appreciate it, and I agree with Megan that other part of not seeing irrigation happening at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a commercial property or a private property is important as well. But I thank you very much for the information.
Do I hear a motion on this resolution?
Move to adopt resolution R-60-22.
Second.
Moving second. Thad, do you want to read it?
Resolution number R-60-22, a resolution adopting a fee schedule for the Water Utility Code pursuant to the provisions of chapters 10A.35 of the Pullman City Code.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, go ahead, Eileen.
I just have a curious question of clarification on the memo, the Monday morning memo. There was an indication that it's in the works for seasonal irrigation management. There's some language in the works, and there's been some confusion that maybe I misunderstood what I read, or that was written on there was a typo or something, but it's in the works, is it not?
It's in the works, and I was trying to give Sean the high sign to let the council know that we will be back before you before the second quarter with suggestions and what some other things are doing. There's an internal group working on going through and creating an ordinance. So we do want to be back to you well before the second quarter. I don't want to make a promise on time for the first quarter, though, yet.
Okay, so of 2023?
Yes.
Okay, it was a typo to say 2024.
Well, I'm having a day, aren't I? Yes.
Well, no, I was wondering if I was having the day, because my hair just went straight up when I saw that, so.
That's on me. We'll be
they've been
back
working-
no
they've
later
been
than.
That's what I thought, so I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that everybody was kind of on the same page there, that it is in the works, and Kara emailed me, and she's on this, so, yeah.
She and another staffer will be attending a conference in October specifically related to these types of items. So we're anxiously awaiting their return so we can continue to work on that.
Thanks, I just wanted everybody to know that that is in the works, thanks.
Next item on the agenda is another resolution adopting a fee schedule for sewer rates and charges. And with that, again, Sean.
Okay, so I won't go back through the entire presentation on the inflationary impacts and go through all that detail, but I will come back to this combined bill comparison with other Washington cities, and this time just focus on the sewer. So again, if we compare ourselves to Wenatchee, they're going to have a sewer bill of $70.58. Ellensburg would be at $37.04, and with the new rate that we would adopt, we would be at $39.87 for a typical sewer bill. So very comparable, quite a bit less than Wenatchee. I'm not quite sure what they're trying to build their war chest for there, but they probably are dealing with some specific regulatory challenges that are driving that. So with that, rather than going back through the inflationary discussion, I will jump straight to the resolution recommended here and take any questions on the sewer utility.
Any questions on this particular one? Do I hear a motion on this resolution?
Move to adopt Resolution R-61-22.
Second.
Moved and seconded. That.
Resolution number R-61-22, a resolution adopting a fee schedule for the sewer rates and charges chapter of the Public Services and Utilities Code pursuant to the provisions of chapter 10.20 of the Pullman City Code.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 3, a resolution dealing with storm drainage and surface. Again, Sean.
Similar to the sewer rate, this is a comparison, again, with Wenatchee and Ellensburg on the storm rate. So a typical stormwater bill would be at $7.32 per month for a typical Pullman single-family home. In Wenatchee, that would be $26.22, and in Ellensburg, that would be $10.73 with the new rates. And the recommended resolution here for your consideration.
No other questions? Do I hear a motion on this resolution?
To adopt resolution number R-62-22.
Second.
That, please read.
Resolution number R-62-22, a resolution adopting a fee schedule for the storm drainage and surface water management utility chapter of the Public Services and Utilities Code pursuant to the provisions of chapter 10.30 of the Pullman City Code.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That, item number 4. And once again, Sean back by popular demand. And this time we're dealing with restricted parking. Item number 4. And we'll
Okay.
mention this is on Northeast Lower Drive and Northeast Gaines, east of Lower Drive.
So staff have received a petition for restricted residential parking area. And you can see here on the map where that area has been requested, again on Northeast Gaines and Lower Drive. And as you can see, it's up by the basketball arena, so fairly close to campus. Currently, there's a maximum 24-hour limit that was established in 1983 for parking on the residential streets in that area. So there already is a specific parking restriction in that location. However, the residents there would like to change that. The petition was received by the city clerk in August, and the city code that regulates these parking restrictions are Chapter 1250, restricted residential parking areas. And basically what that says is, to advance to the next step in the process, the council would need to make a finding to concur with the petition that the change promotes the health, safety, and welfare of the community. So to do this, the proposal must provide the possibility of accomplishing at least 3 out of 10 identified criteria. And in the petition, they pointed out 4 particular elements. One was to relieve the tendency of motor vehicles to be parked as to block pedestrian crosswalks or driveway entrances in the area. The second one they noted was to reduce litter in the residential area. A third was to reduce unreasonable burdens placed on residents of the area and visitors to and guests of residents attempting to gain access to the residences. And then lastly, they noted to preserve and improve the safety of children or physically disabled persons or elderly persons residing in the area. Other criteria may qualify as well. And they provided a handful of pictures, which we distilled down to one slide here, just to show some of those elements. So in the picture on the left there, of course, they're showing basically a driveway being blocked. In the center there, cars parking in the wrong direction, some litter that's coming from traffic in the area, and then parking in no parking zones. So I won't try to walk you through the full criteria list here, but here's the list of 10 items, and I'll come back to this at the very end. So the next steps would be for council to decide or not to accept the petition and then refer it to the city engineering division for a traffic investigation. And that traffic investigation would essentially include, a detailed evaluation of the proposal, confirmation of compliance with the Pullman City Code, and then we would return to council with recommendations for adoption. So that's basically what the code tells us. We've got to take these steps to get through the process. Just to give a little bit of history on where these restricted parking zones have been set up in the past, there are a number of them. I won't go through all those in detail, but this just gives a quick highlight of where those have been adopted. So the residents of the area had several requests, and this is something that the engineering team would evaluate. One was to remove the 24-hour parking limitation that is currently there, and then allow the guests to have continuous, uninterrupted access to the street while obeying the city's 96-hour rule. They also asked for maintenance of the current no parking and no parking this side of the street zones along Lower Drive and Gaines. They're asking for parking permit only zones on Lower Drive and Gaines that are enforceable 24 hours a day, Monday to Friday. They're also asking for additional guest passes that are limited to 3 guest passes within a 7-day period for each residence, a 72-hour duration on each pass, and without specific time expirations, allowing for 72-hour continuous street parking. The last request of the petition is that each resident is eligible to obtain 1 resident parking pass and 1 guest pass for street parking for purchase through the Pullman Police Department. So the question before you tonight is, does the petition promote the health, safety, and welfare of the community per the code criteria? And here's the list of the criteria in city code that the council would need to base their decision on. So with that,
And I think council saw the names on the petition, and you've been up in that area before, and so comments or questions, okay? Go to Eileen first.
Sean, what's the zone? What's the residential, or what's the zone for that area of Lower Drive and Gaines?
what's the zoning there? I'm not sure. I'd have to defer to RJ on that one. Okay.
So one residential pass for R3?
One residential pass for each property owner, and then it sounds like they were requesting one resident parking pass and one guest pass for each street parking. And we would, as part of the engineering analysis, look through all of their requests and come back with a recommendation on these. You're not adopting these tonight by any means.
You're just moving it forward if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go to Ann next, and then we'll go to Nathan. Trying to get everybody involved here, okay?
Thank you. I've spoken with people on Upper Drive, and I know somebody there since 2010. I've visited their home several times, and I actually touched base with them and a couple other people, and they all said it was a huge improvement up on Upper when they did this. And I didn't really think about the litter as much, but that was what they commented on the most, was that there was so much less litter after this. After this restriction went in. And in relation to the number of permits, I'm also wondering, because the person that I'm referring to, they have 2 parking spots in their driveway, so if they have 2 cars, they do have off-street parking. But I wonder if a residence does not have off-street parking, either at all or maybe just to accommodate 1 vehicle, but it's a 2-vehicle family or more. I don't know if that can be what that looks like, but it would make a huge difference if you didn't have a driveway. And I don't know, I haven't been through there in a long time. Maybe most of those places do, but.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And that's something we would take a hard look at with the engineering analysis to get a sense for, how many of the residents have off-street parking, but then also get an estimate of how many on-street parking spaces you need to accommodate kind of the overflow.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Nathan next, and then we'll go to Becky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sean, just for everybody out there to be completely transparent, I took a tour of this when the petitioner was first, and Becky, if you don't mind me also saying, Becky and I both did, and it's, I believe it's an issue. I have to be transparent because with it coming before the council, we were not involved in the process at all, but at least to be clear to the council, met with the petitioner, did take a tour, took some photos I know myself, and living in that area, this is a continuous problem. I don't like to say that, I like to say challenge it. This is a problem. I'm glad to hear Upper has had a difference. I think also, some of these side streets or streets that have become primarily rental have almost been forgotten because there's less residents living in them. And so the issues continue to grow. So in any case, I just wanted to at least bring that up, that to be transparent, did meet with the petitioner. I feel there's an issue, but yeah.
Becky.
Thank you. Sean, can we go back to where permits are in other places in town? It looked to me as that went by kind of quickly, but it looked to me like there's a law on College Hill. Am I right about that? Like this is not an anomaly happening here, but this falls within a pattern of others, and I just wanted to point that out. Thank you so much.
I was even, some of us who've been on the council for a while know that Sam Sorum, who was one of our sergeants, is now one of our code enforcement officers, came with a petition for the street that he lived on at that time, and could cite all the different problems. You could have a single-family home, but if it's now rented out to 6 or 7 people, and they all have cars, and then you have the issues. And I actually had that, on my street too, one time. Unfortunately, we're back to a single family and that single family home again. So I think we've all seen that. So now it just basically comes to, would you approve this motion so at least engineers can do the study? So, Francis.
Glenn, just as information, I looked at the GIS map, and it's an R1 zone. It's not an R3 zone.
I thought it was mostly single-family, a lot of single-family through
Okay.
there.
Do I hear a motion?
Move to accept the petition?
Second.
And that's a motion to accept restricted residential parking area petition to revise parking rules on Northeast Lower Drive, Northeast Gain Road, east of Northeast Lower Drive, and refer the petition to the city traffic engineer for an engineering and traffic investigation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we now move to item number 5, a motion to ratify the mayor's emergency declaration on September 17th relating to water. And yes, we have talked about that tonight. Again, Sean.
So just wanted to provide an update on where we're at today, and that's primarily the progress on the repair activities at the Grandin Center intersection. So if we look at pictures from this afternoon, our contractor, Motley Inc., has done the first layer of paving on one side of the road. So essentially what we have to do is excavate, the damaged portion of the road, prep that with fresh gravel, compact it, and then follow that with the first layer of paving. And then at some point, we also have to come back and do a second layer of paving. And unfortunately, we can't pave both layers one right after another. We've got to let that first layer cool, check the compaction, do the testing on it, and then come back and then do a second layer down the road. So we've got that first layer down on one side of the road. Now, tomorrow, the contractor is going to switch to the other side of the road, excavate that damaged portion of the road, start rebuilding that base material, and then Thursday come back and place that first layer of pavement. The intent then would be to stop the work because we're going into the game weekend, and then have 2 lanes of traffic open on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, have the contractor come back on Monday, and then start to place those second lifts of pavement. And then, of course, then next week we would have a fully functioning road back in place. So, a few things to point out. If you see in this picture, because we'll go through the weekend just with one side of the road paved, well, both sides of the road paved, we've got to have ramps down to that first layer of pavement. And so you'll see those ramps, and that'll get us through the weekend. But once we do that second layer of pavement, it'll bring that up to the full surface, and we won't have the ramps at the end of next week. So I'd really like to thank, Motley and Motley Inc. They really stepped up here for us. We called them, and the next day they said, "Yeah, we'll make this happen." So it's great to have a relationship with a contractor to step up and be able to do that for us. They're doing the work on a time and materials basis. They've given us all of their rates and details, so we're tracking on those to make sure that at the end of the day we're tracking on those details and paying for that appropriately. But I also would like to acknowledge our engineering staff because they've really stepped up and tracked on this and are making it happen.
And I can generally attest that once Motley is done with this section of Grand Avenue, which is also Highway 270, it'll be much smoother than we got from WashDOT on their alleged paving that happened. Okay, I just want to make that comment. They still have some holes to take care of on that highway, so, okay. Any other comments on this? Do I hear a motion on this?
Move to ratify the mayor's emergency declaration.
Second.
Moving second, a motion to ratify the mayor's emergency declaration of September 17th relating to the water main break at the intersection of Grand and Center Street. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We now move into discussion items. And first of all, council asked questions about the drive-throughs. And here's R.J. Lott.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. It looks like my maps must have gotten erased mistakenly. Anyways, back in May, the council adopted council goals and priorities. One of those goals was to take a closer look at drive-throughs through downtown. In your packet this evening, there is a map that outlines the C2 Central Business District, which generally outlines downtown Pullman. On that map are 4 drive-throughs that are currently existing. 2 are in use. One is the U.S. Bank at 301 East Main, and the second is Umpqua Bank located at 225 North Grand. Also on the map are 2 locations where there was previously used drive-throughs which are no longer being utilized. There we go. One at the former Oasis restaurant on Main, and the other at the former Banner Bank location at 300 East Main. Pullman City Code Section 17.70 allows drive-through facilities as an accessory use for banks, restaurants, and other general commercial services. The Pullman City Code does not have a formal definition of a drive-through, but generally speaking, a drive-through is a place or facility where one can be served without leaving a vehicle. That's fairly common. Staff is requesting further direction from the City Council on these items as it relates to downtown drive-throughs. Generally speaking, there are 4 options that the Council can consider. The first is to make no changes to the Pullman City Code, thus allowing drive-throughs to continue for any commercial use. Second is don't allow drive-throughs for any commercial activity. 3, allow drive-throughs by obtaining a conditional use permit. Conditional use permit goes through a public hearing via our hearing examiner. And the 4th, allow drive-throughs for low-impact uses, such as banks or other facilities which would have low commercial traffic, low commercial vehicle traffic. And just as a side note, any changes to the Pullman City Code would need to go through the Planning Commission via a public hearing, and then later to the City Council for adoption. Are there any suggestions, comments that I can take at this time?
Megan.
I do have some comments, but first I wonder if do you have examples of other low-impact uses besides just banks?
I would use banks, pharmacies, something that wouldn't have a high impact, especially as it relates to vehicle traffic.
Okay.
As you see, the banks downtown don't normally back up onto the public streets, where fast food restaurants or coffee shops would have peak volumes, which would be problematic.
Yeah. And that's my concern, is the more high volume. As we're looking at creating a more walkable downtown, we've made that a public goal. That was my concern, being on the record with the Oasis, the proposed Starbucks, that I was worried about cars backing out onto Main. I continue to see it with Cougar Country on Grand. It's a real problem, and I'd hate to see that in our downtown. I just don't want our downtown to turn into a car bucks or something like that. It's got to be thought out more appropriately. So that's my input.
Other comments? Eileen.
Yeah, there's a couple more drive-through twos that we don't need to talk about because they're outside the downtown area. But the conditional use permit approach looks pretty fair to me, because we don't want to restrict a pharmacy or these other types of uses. We want to leave that door open through the hearing examiner process. So I would favor the conditional use permit approach.
Becky.
RJ, could you talk a little bit about the conditional use permit? Like, what would that look like? What's that process? What conditions?
Sure, great question, thank you. The hearing examiner meets once a month and that is an opportunity for folks to come forward with a conditional use permit application. Those can vary wildly depending upon the zoning that exists at at any particular location. The hearing examiner does have a criteria as outlined in the Pullman City Code, and there would also be a time for staff to take a look at perhaps a traffic impact study. So if a restaurant, a fast food restaurant or a coffee shop were to come in, staff could evaluate those peak volumes for when it may cause traffic issues or other issues that would allow traffic to flow freely on Main or Paradise or Grand. So those opportunities would exist in which they would not exist otherwise if it was allowed outright. It would also allow the public to comment and to write in and to verbally or orally comment during the public hearing before the hearing examiner, and the hearing examiner would take that testimony under consideration.
Thank you.
Other comments? Ann?
Thank you. And so, keep going. Once that, is the hearing examiner decision final, or does it still come, it doesn't come to us, is that correct?
It is final unless it's appealed, then it goes to Whitman Superior Court.
Right,
Conditional uses do not go to City Council.
that's right. Just, thank you.
Becky, once again?
I just wanted to say then, I think the conditional use permit, I agree with Councilmember McCall that this would be most useful. I know that we all want successful businesses downtown, and this would be a way to make sure that we get successful businesses in without clogging Main Street. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay. Nathan?
So going the route of the conditional use, it takes us at, I mean, we don't get any decision at all.
Correct.
So people can come to us and say, look, this is going to impact me in this way and that way. And so that means that we wouldn't get to say, you know, we hear you and let's take all input. It's out of our hands.
Correct. If someone had concerns, I would ask them to put those in writing, and staff would forward those to the hearing examiner as part of the record.
Okay. I would not be in favor of that. I think there needs to be some amount of input from citizens that come to us to let us know, which is what we saw with Starbucks proposal. So that's my opinion.
Go ahead.
So for me, I would support the hearing examiner with the conditional use. Part of what I feel it does is it makes sure that there's consistency in the decision-making process, as opposed to, you know, for the council, if we decide one way one time and the next time we decide a different way, I think that opens us up for lawsuits for consistency, and so I think the hearing examiner would allow that consistency process. So I would support the conditional use.
Okay, now I see your lights on. Okay. Pat?
I would concur with the comments on the conditional use permit. I think that enables the petitioner or the hearing examiner to look at it on a case-by-case basis rather than, you know, having a hard and fast rule regardless of what the circumstances are, which I think the other areas would kind of press that. And obviously, we want to make a change to what the existing code is just based on what happened with the Starbucks situation on Main Street. So I really do think that the conditional use permit route is probably the most prudent way to do it. And that's always been an option for people to change the use of what has already been designated. I mean, that's the only difference here is that we no longer have a board of adjustment, we have a hearing examiner. So with that having been said, I would concur with the conditional use permit direction.
Is it the consensus of the council conditional use permit route for all new drive-throughs or those that are high intensity such as fast food restaurants and coffee shops?
Okay, back to Eileen.
Have we determined that this would be for the downtown? Okay.
If Rob could go back a slide, and it would be just in the C2, just in this highlighted zone.
Just in the central, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'd be good with that because there could be other things in other places as there already are.
It takes it away from the emotional part, it leaves it to the hearing examiner, which is the most common way of doing it. So I think you've pretty well heard a consensus here tonight with maybe one exemption, so. Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much for that
Thank you.
presentation. We appreciate it. Item number 2 is legislative priorities. Mike Urban.
Thank you. Good evening again, Council. Every year we put together some legislative priorities to work with our delegation on to continue to move our community forward at the State House when they convene in January. Based on some activity at the end of last year, the delegation has come to us and asked for maybe a little sooner meeting to help preserve driving home in less treacherous conditions in December. And I've always had that in the back of my mind, and we certainly agreed with them. In working with Representatives Dye, Schmick, and Senator Schessler, we were able to get them all to get on their docket to be in town on the 15th of November. So since the item has moved up a month, we needed to certainly move this discussion as to how to approach the 2023 legislative priorities up proportionately. So before you tonight, for conversation and for us to take some notes and get a draft put together, is a copy of the 2022 legislative priorities, and we'd like to get working on the 2023.
So, Francis.
I can at least jump in and look at a couple of them. I think with our bypass one, we need to move that to more of a generic, as opposed to north or south bypass, because the north or south bypass are off the table right now, as we've designated the north and south one. But we definitely want to continue to move forward with a.
I thought we already did that.
There was.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I thought we already did that. We amended the language on this?
That was in the goals, I think.
Oh, my mistake.
That was in the goals.
My mistake,
Yeah, that was
okay.
not
So
legislative.
to
reflect-
amend
we
this
can
to be,
reflect it here.
to reflect the goals is what
Okay.
I'd say for that. And then I feel one thing that would be good for us to include in is policing, just the issues that our policing is facing because of legislation that the legislature's made as it relates to pursuit and the probable cause and some of those things.
Okay.
And again, I think I mentioned earlier, I want to make sure we keep the Highway 26. Before then, it was going pretty well, and then all of a sudden backed out. Took care of 195, and a great job there, but 26 really needs it. Megan.
Under livability and housing and affordability, I wonder if we could also add the term missing middle housing, which has become a point of concern not only around, agreed that we need affordable housing that needs to continue to be on there, but this missing middle, which is recognized as often missing in small towns, which are basically higher density housing alternatives. I'd like to see that mentioned.
Any other comments? And again, you can also send some emails to us, too, upcoming week.
Sure, I'd like to work with Dee going into the next meeting, certainly to get a draft with these thoughts, because again, it all comes down to making sure the right words are on the page and getting at least a jumping off point that we can start crafting the right message there. So if there's any additional thoughts from the group, if you wouldn't mind emailing Dee or myself directly, say by lunch on Monday, is that too much?
Then we can come back with a draft for you so we can have it all ready to go.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So the railroad tracks, now remind me, we were not discussing rail banking for what purpose?
We would discuss rail banking as part of the full presentation. We don't want to lead with rail banking for political reasons based on my discussions with elected officials, DOT. Rail banking is absolutely part of this. If council would like to put the name in there, we can certainly add that to it. Is that the suggestion?
More of a clarification. I think from my own discussions, staffers, so on and so forth, it's not that the rail banking is a bad word for, political wise. It's rail banking outside of the Pullman boundaries. So inside, that's a different matter. It's, what we do within our boundaries. It's along the lines of into the county.
We'll take a run at some language and put it out on that, see if we can come up with something that keeps us in the door.
Okay, and, of course, mental health, keep in there. So, yeah.
So just I was looking at my notes here, and I did forget to mention, not only is the delegation going to be in town on the 15th as well, all things being equal, and we expect the city action days to be live again in 2023. It wasn't in 2022 because we were still exiting COVID. So that's going to be February 15th and 16th in Olympia, and I am working into the budget to make sure that council can attend for those that want to go. And that'll be another opportunity as well to talk about our legislative priorities with our delegation.
Nathan, and I've had this discussion with our legislators as you have. Under mental health, can we also maybe push a little bit more specifics to push the state, because it's coming out of the Department of Health, to allow reciprocity with other state certifications? Because that's one of the things that some of our mental health counselors have said is one of the things that's holding us back. That they could take somebody that had an Idaho certification and they could be doing mental health counseling here, as well as Colorado. We just need reciprocity agreements. And our Department of Health apparently is a little reticent in doing that.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. Yeah, great suggestion.
Because we've heard that from Mike and from other people that are in mental health counseling. Okay, we'll come back with some language for you.
Excellent. Thanks, council.
With that, is there any new business to come before the council tonight? Seeing none, then at this time the council will adjourn to an executive session pursuant to RCW 4230. Consider the selection, site, or acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of an increased price. Almost a guarantee of that. Executive session is expected to last approximately 5 minutes. And if it becomes necessary to extend, we will announce that. It's 9:18 right now. We're going to give the council 4 minutes to get to the room next door here. And then we'll start at 9:22 for 5 minutes. Okay?
It's a race.
Expect to take any final action. Okay, I've got one mic open here on this side. Okay, I need 2 council members. Okay. Eileen, you want to make a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn this evening's meeting of the Pullman City Council.
Becky?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Very good.
Good night.
Thank you. Cut everything.